Hello, I'm Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. Welcome to my channel and thank you for watching. If you would like to schedule an appointment with me, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com or shrinkformen@protonmail.com, and you can find both of those addresses in the About section below. Today's video is the second part in the series about understanding what it means when a narcissistic or borderline woman says, "I feel unsafe." Do you know the false abuse allegation risk factors for men in relationships with borderline, narcissistic, histrionic, and other toxic women? If you're married to one of them, it's essential that you do. There is a lot at stake, including the relationships with your kids, your reputation, your livelihood, your freedom, and your physical and emotional well-being. Now, typically, the more clever toxic women won't outright accuse you of specific abuses that are easier to disprove. This is especially true if they're manufacturing evidence to obtain a restraining order to gain an advantage in family court, in which case these women will make vague or soft accusations that are more difficult to refute and more open to incorrect assumptions. For example, "I feel unsafe." Now, anyone can feel unsafe without any real threats to their safety. Remember, feelings are not facts. Unfortunately, most family court judges lack the expertise or interest, for that matter, to determine if a woman who is claiming to feel afraid or unsafe is genuinely in danger until such evidence to the contrary is presented. Consequently, judges tend to err on the side of caution until such evidence is available, which in family court can take months. That's months away from your kids. In this context, saying, "I feel unsafe," carries less legal risk later on for women who abuse this when facts disproving her fears come to light compared to making easily disprovable, highly detailed abuse allegations. Thus, an ethically challenged attorney can argue, "No, Your Honor, Mr. Meal Ticket didn't hit or threaten to hit Ms. Full of Beans, but he yells all the time and Ms. Full of Beans feels afraid." It won't matter that Ms. Full of Beans instigates the majority of arguments and yells as much or more than Mr. Meal Ticket. It doesn't matter that Ms. Full of Beans clawed Mr. Meal Ticket's face because he wouldn't hand over his phone when she demanded it. Her feelings are her feelings, and they're real to her, or so her attorney will claim, and unfortunately, many therapists. Look, ideally, good mental health professionals help individuals reality test their feelings in maladaptive, that means faulty, erroneous, incorrect beliefs that oftentimes fuel their feelings. Good therapists help people work through unresolved emotional and relational issues from childhood and help to identify ongoing self-sabotaging relationship behaviors and patterns. Most importantly, we help clients embrace personal accountability. Yes, I know for many of you who have been to couples counseling with your ex-narcissists and borderlines, that sounds very different from what you experienced, but the way I was trained is that it is important in one's personal work to take personal accountability rather than helping clients craft elaborate psychobabble word salad victim narratives. Meaningful change does not occur unless we take full responsibility for our decisions and our emotions. But I digress. Assuming that your wife or girlfriend hasn't called 911 yet, it is time to gather your wits and get your bleep together. Snap out of the fog. That means fear, obligation, and guilt. And stop the pointless JADE. That stands for justify, argue, defend, and explain. And I have videos and articles on both of those phenomenon. It is time to stop the JADE, circular arguments about whether your wife is a borderline and you're a narcissist. And yes, I have clients who have shared audio recordings of arguments where they are going back and forth with their wives, like, you're the narcissist. No, you're the narcissist. No, you're the covert narcissist. No, you're the borderline. If you're doing this, just stop. Just stop. 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 If you don't, you are giving your wife or girlfriend or ex, for that matter, if you share kids, more NPD, BPD fan fiction material with which to pad her victim claims. To be clear, refusal to have another pointless fight you can't win because its premise is false or greatly exaggerated isn't being selfish, cruel, mean, cold, or abusive, nor is it evidence of not dealing with her, not loving her, or not fighting for the relationship. I hate that one. In other words, not having another pointless fight initiated by your partner or ex is not an example of you abusing her. I don't care what she says. I don't care what her attorney says. I don't care what her therapist says. Not having another pointless fight initiated by your wife or ex is not an example of you abusing her. Evidentially speaking, you are exercising self-control to avoid exposing the kids to more parental conflict. At least, this is how a good attorney should frame it. Also, if your NPD or BPD wife or ex feels so unsafe, why does she try so hard to pick fights with you? Furthermore, if she feels so unsafe, why does she demand unnecessary phone contact and create reasons to be in your physical presence? This example applies more to exes, because if I were an attorney, these are questions I'd routinely ask in court when, for example, a client's ex is claiming that he is refusing to co-parent, while out the other side of her mouth, she's saying he's an abusive monster and she is afraid of him. Okay, then, why are you trying to force contact, lady? Both things can't be true. In family court and custody evaluations, it is unlikely that you will be viewed unfavorably for abstaining from childish arguments if you are able to clearly explain why you are abstaining. For instance, if your goal is to de-escalate conflict for the sake of the children and your own mental health, you abstain from negative, pointless conflict. Get it? Continuing to argue with crazy usually has the effect of making you both look crazy to the court. And if you are a man, it could also help crazy to look like the victim by claiming reactive abuse. He or she who can control their emotions better usually fares best in these situations. Now I want to look at the risk factors posed by narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, or other toxic personality partners. And these risk factors, are ones that I've identified in my practice. So you might not see these in blogs or other videos because I actually am a working therapist. So this is what I see in my practice via my clients. Okay. Does your wife or girlfriend threaten to call the police as a form of coercive control and intimidation? Does she taunt you by saying, "Who do you think the cops will believe?" a la Amber Heard? Does she record you, or do you suspect she's recording you? Particularly, does she pick a fight and then turn on the recording device once you're arguing back with her? That's a setup, okay? Does she say things like, "Get away from me, don't touch me," when you are nowhere near her? If so, she's definitely recording you. And by the way, if that happens, you need to say clearly, I'm not standing anywhere near you. You are on the other side of the room. Are you recording this? Are you trying to set me up? Does she say things like, I feel unsafe. You scare me. You're making me feel uncomfortable. You're so angry. Or other variations on this theme. And this is especially so when you are not angry, not raising your voice. Does she accuse you of somehow harming or scaring the kids when you don't allow her to bully and control you? Does she have a history of physically assaulting you and or destroying your property or taking your property? Does she parentify and emotionally incest the kids? In other words, does she use your kids as emotional caretakers, protectors, confidants, or surrogate spouses? Does she boast that she'll get the house, the money, and you won't see the kids if you leave her? Does she tell on herself by saying, everyone knows how abusive you are? If so, her smear campaign is likely already underway. Does she undermine your ability to parent and or spend one-on-one time with the kids? Does she stalk and monitor your social media? Does she accuse you of recording her and then forcibly grab your phone? This is a big one. Side note, if you're headed to divorce and your ex grabs your phone, do not touch her to get it back from her. Do not touch her arm. Do not touch her hand. You let her have it. At this point, you should have a burner phone that you keep in your car where you can go and call the police if you need to say she has taken your property. If you touch her in any way to get your property back, I know it's BS, but she can claim assault. Finally, does she cheat on you? In other words, is she lining up her next white knight triangle meal ticket enabler, etc.? Any one of these behaviors or situations I just went through is problematic. The more you can identify, the more you are at risk of false allegations. And if you haven't sought legal counsel yet, I urge you to do so. Now let's look at the risk factors that you pose to yourself if you choose to become healthier while in this relationship. Now, perhaps it sounds strange to say that by you becoming healthier emotionally and physically puts you at greater risk for false abuse allegations, but this is true. It is often the case. If you've been in this relationship for any length of time and you've been YouTubing and Googling, why does my wife act this way, et cetera, you'll find it is a cliche how easily triggered people with personality disorders can be. Politely disagreeing with them can be a trigger. Putting extra salt on your mashed potatoes, true client story, can be a trigger. Visiting your family on your father's birthday can be a trigger. Leaving for work in the morning can be a trigger. The big triggers, i.e., the ones that are most likely to trigger a 911 call, false allegations and restraining orders, are anything that kicks off the narcissist, borderlines, or histrionic's 5 fundamental fears, the 5 things they fear, or the 5 consequences that they fear. These individuals fear, and I've discussed this in many videos and many articles, so if you want more in-depth information, just go to shrinkformen.com and do a search, use the search function, and you will find it. 1, losing control and dominance over you. 2, losing assets and resources. 3, feeling or appearing inferior or inadequate. 4, being abandoned. And 5, exposure for who and what they truly are. I just want to address the abandonment fear. And again, I've mentioned this elsewhere. Divorcing your borderline or narcissistic spouse is not abandonment. Adults do not get abandoned. Kids get abandoned. Kittens get abandoned. Cars can get abandoned. You're not abandoning her unless you tie her up, drive her 100 miles outside of Las Vegas to the desert, and leave her there like Joe Pesci. Otherwise, it's not abandonment. You're ending a relationship with a toxic partner. Okay. In my practice, the following client changes are the ones that I see most commonly lead to police involvement. Narcissistic, borderline, and histrionic women, and men for that matter, can become triggered when you set and enforce healthy boundaries with them, when you emotionally detach and disengage from them, that is to say, not getting pulled into their dramas and conflicts and not trying to emotionally regulate them anymore. They get triggered when you hold them accountable, when you make your feelings, wants, and needs as much of a priority as her feelings, wants, and needs. You know, things that in a healthy relationship are A-okay. They get triggered when you criticize their behavior or insist on better behavior. For example, no more disrespect, name calling, dishonesty, double standards, and undermining you as a parent. They can become triggered when you seek emotional support, either from mental health professionals or family and friends. Abusers want you to keep the abuse secret. Meanwhile, they're often on social media and talking to anyone who will listen to them about what an a-hole you are. Okay? These individuals can become triggered when you practice self-care, like regular exercise and making time for your friends and family. They're often triggered when you set reasonable limits on how much money they spend. Now, if they're earning their own money, they can spend it how they want as long as they're contributing to the household and family expenses. But what I see a lot is many of my clients' partners do not work or are purposefully underemployed, and they spend like drunken sailors on liberty. And when my clients say, hey, we can't afford this, you're putting us in the family at risk, these women claim that my clients are being controlling and financially abusive. I want to clarify this. And again, I don't care what your wife or ex's therapist says or what these women's domestic violence organizations claim. Not spending the family into bankruptcy and homelessness, or not wanting your wife to spend the family into bankruptcy and homelessness, is not financial abuse. It isn't. That's called being a responsible adult. Okay, end of tangent. These individuals also become triggered when you discover that they're cheating. In fact, this is often when false abuse allegations occur, is after a client discovers his wife has been cheating on him. They are triggered when you file for divorce, and after divorce, a big trigger for them is when you begin a new relationship. Oftentimes, all of that divorce craziness will start up again once you have a new partner. So if you become stronger, healthier, if you start to have more self-respect and less tolerance for their disrespect, their entitlement, their lack of integrity, and other aberrant traits and behaviors, it will trigger them. Expect it and prepare for it. All right, now let's look at how to manage your vulnerabilities. So, your fears, vulnerabilities, and the cumulative effect of abuse are the levers by which a narcissist, histrionic, or borderline partner will manipulate and dominate you. This includes pushing your buttons to elicit big emotional reactions. And this is precisely what you must not give her. You must not have those big emotional reactions to her provocations and abuse, especially when they sense that you are at the end of the line with them. So, the ability to effectively, well, let me explain, because when you give them that big emotional reaction, they may be recording you, and then they're going to spin that as you being the abuser. So please try to control your emotions. So the ability to effectively compartmentalize your emotions in these situations is vitally, vitally important. Now, ordinarily, I encourage clients to feel and process their emotions. It's necessary in order to heal. However, when you're entering the guerrilla warfare plunder dome of high conflict divorce and custody, you are better served by postponing the heavy emotional work. That's to say, do focus on reality testing, managing your anxiety and depression symptoms, and using healthy coping strategies, at least until after you have an enforceable temporary custody order, are out of the marital home, and are reasonably sure of your attorney's competence and commitment to you and your kids. The reason for this is because divorcing one of these individuals is every bit as toxic as being married to them, and sometimes more toxic, because now they really want to destroy you basically for not wanting to put up with their abuse anymore. So if you are making yourself, look, when you're doing the healing work, when you're getting into the etiology of the core childhood wounds that got you into this relationship in the first place, that puts you in a more emotionally vulnerable state. And when you are in high conflict divorce and custody litigation, you are at war. So that is not a good time to be making yourself more emotionally vulnerable. During that period, in my work with my clients, we focus more on the practical, logistical matters, how to manage their emotions while they're going through that highly toxic adversarial process. And then once things are starting to calm down, because their attorneys, if they have a good one, have got a handle on things and are providing the barrier and sort of boxing in the borderline or the narcissist so that they're less disruptive to you and the kids, then we get into more of the heavy emotional processing work. But when things are just crazy town in the litigation, that's usually not a good time to do that. Okay, to continue, the following are common vulnerabilities and issues that I help my clients with in my practice. So a lot of my clients have developed, for example, learned helplessness, where they become paralyzed in terms of making a decision and trying to help themselves. That is a result of being put in one no-win situation after the other. Like, if you move forward, wrong, backwards, wrong, sideways, wrong. So they just stop moving. A lot of my clients have also developed avoidant tendencies, such as sticking their head in the sand. But remember, when you stick your head in the sand, it makes your butt an easier target. I already touched on this. A lot of my clients have developed analysis paralysis, and that is, I think, an effect of learned helplessness, where they overthink things too much, which leads to a failure to act. A lot of my clients will reality test themselves out of the denial of the bargaining and stages of grief. Other vulnerabilities are being disorganized. This is especially true of clients with ADHD. Another vulnerability is not being able to manage the compulsion to JADE. That's justify, argue, defend, and explain. And the reason that is important is when you JADE, you're continuing to engage with your abuser. That weakens you. It puts you in a more vulnerable state. And you are probably unwittingly giving her more fodder to claim that she's the victim and you're this unreasonable jerk. So don't do that. Many of my clients have learned fear responses that they need to work on. That's the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Also, codependency, rescuer, people pleaser, fixer, Mr. Nice Guy tendencies. Depending on the length of the relationship, many of my clients, another vulnerability is they have a lack of social and emotional support. Other vulnerabilities include trauma bond issues, poor personal boundaries, thirstiness for approval and being liked, being easily manipulated via shame, fear, guilt, and obligation, and something I would call high trust and low discernment. So high trust and low discernment can be a disastrous combination in relation to selecting an attorney. This one really doesn't have anything to do with your narcissistic or borderline wife or ex. It developed in the relationship where you learn to trust your abuser, which is bad discernment or judgment. So I think of it as the Charlie Brown, Lucy Van Pelt football metaphor. In other words, some clients, no matter how many times their ex and or attorney screw them over, they keep going back for more. As a therapist, I have a client who's doing this, particularly with an attorney. I find it really frustrating. I'm thinking of several clients right now where attorneys were just, I don't know if it was lazy, incompetent, or just didn't care, maybe all of the above. Communications, not like nervous hand-holding stuff, but legit issues went unanswered. The attorneys routinely showed up for court unprepared, negotiated against my client's best interest, or didn't even discuss what they agreed to with the other attorney. And a lot of clients, because of their abuse history, will keep giving these really bad attorneys money to their own detriment. Okay. I cannot stress enough the importance of finding a way to manage these issues. Of equal importance is finding a mental health professional who has expertise in this area and can provide gentle nudges, or at least in my position, a kindly proverbial kick in the backside as needed. Many clients arrive to my practice too late in the game. They've already made too many unforced errors and sustained irreparable damage to their cases. And this includes attorneys who just don't get it and or are only care about generating fees. If this is you, do not wait. Do not hope things will get better, whether in your marriage or if you're already at the point where you're divorcing with your attorney. Seek guidance before your narcissistic, borderline, or histrionic partner calls the cops and gets an ex parte restraining order against you. Now, that is not an inevitable outcome. It is possible to avoid this, but you need to be proactive and intelligent about how you go about it. This includes effective and diligent documentation. It does not have to be a she said, he said, police call, or court appearance. Another thing that I encourage you to do is learn about what kind of documentation is going to be most helpful to you, which a good and competent attorney should be able to advise you on. So that is the end of part 2 of this series. I have a third one that I will post next week. Again, I am Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. If you have a question or would like to schedule an appointment with me, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com or shrinkformen@protonmail.com. The link to the article that this is adapted from, along with my email addresses, are in the About section below this video. Thank you for watching. If you're on social media, links to all of my social media accounts are also below. I think that's it. Have a good day. Bye-bye.